When I first started at the Courant, I sat next to Josh, and my first impression of him was that he was a little intimidating. Not only because he was a big guy, but because he often, got aggressive with his sources on the phone, and he had this incredible track record of reporting that, shed light on these horrible injustices in our state and lifted up the voices of our state's most afflicted people. But I quickly learned that he was one of the nicest people in our newsroom. He always had something kind to say to you, whether it was about a story or something, you'd posted on Facebook over the weekend. He was often, very positive and had such a little funny joke to tell you. And that's what I think I'm going to miss the most about him.
Hi, I'm Christine Dempsey. I'm the early morning breaking news reporter at the Hartford Courant. First of all, I wanted to say, Sharon and family, that I am so sorry for your loss. I wanted to also tell you a little story about Josh. One day, about a year or two ago, I came into work with a big Band-Aid on my nose, right in the middle of my face. I had a very minor medical procedure, and I was worried about what the other reporters would say. And people said things, no one was mean, but people said things about it and asked, what do you have a Band-Aid for on your face? What happened? No one said, did you cut yourself shaving or anything like that? But then I saw Josh later in the day, and he was so sweet, and he didn't say anything about the Band-Aid. And I actually had forgotten it, that I even had it on my face. And he just had this sympathetic look in his eyes that I can't really describe. And he also had this soft tone of voice, and I'm sure you've heard this tone of voice, soothing tone of voice. And when he walked away, we had this little conversation about work or something, and like I said, I forgot I even had this big Band-Aid on my face. And then I realized later, oh, that's why he was so nice. But he's always nice. He's always nice. And he had that way of just making you feel like special, and the sympathy that he used in his everyday life, he also used it in his job. And as you know, he's written so many stories about the disadvantaged and people who are not being treated properly, whether it's the elderly or psychiatric patients or children in foster care. And he used that empathy in his job. And that is what made him an incredible reporter, and we are going to miss him so much.
Hi, Sharon and the rest of the family. My name is Brad. I'm a photographer at the Courant. I just wanted to express my condolences and just tell you how much I enjoyed working alongside Josh. We recently had to fill out a form for the union, and we had to cite a story that we were proud of working on. And I immediately thought of a story that Josh and I worked on last summer, which was a very difficult custody battle, a Glastonbury woman trying to get custody to her children in the United Arab Emirates. And Josh's piece was used in court, is my understanding. And only a few short days later, this woman was reunited with her children, and that speaks to the kind of journalism that he did, how serious a journalist he was, how dedicated to telling the story he was. And I've just never seen a reporter as sensitive as Josh. The genuine interest he would demonstrate in the subjects that he was writing about is absolutely second to none. And it speaks to the reporter that he was and the person that he was. And I will greatly miss working alongside Josh, and the newsroom suffers a great loss. And I wish you and your family all the best during this time. You will not be forgotten.
My name is Emily. I started at the Courant about a year ago, so I know that I didn't know Josh as well as some people did. But for my very first day at the paper, and even though Josh had so much more experience than I do, he treated me like an equal from the first time that we met. I looked up to him pretty much immediately because his reporting is pretty legendary. He has covered some really difficult to cover topics, and he's done it really, really well. But he always talked to me like him and I were on the same level. Like he was never condescending. He was always open and willing to answer my questions no matter how dumb they were. And he just really made me feel like a part of the team. which meant a lot for me, especially as a new reporter walking into the paper. And I remember that he just was so willing to share his stories with me, and share sources with me and point me in the right direction for things. I remember on this one assignment, we were both covering kind of similar topics, and we got some wires crossed and both showed up at the same event, a union meeting at a nursing home. And I walked in and Josh was already there, and he just immediately, he said, "Oh, no, it's okay. I'll go home. Like, you can take this story." Even though he definitely was the one who'd worked harder to cultivate those sources. And he left and he let me take the story. And it meant a lot. And it still does mean a lot to have somebody who's such a team player like that and so willing to help others along. He also made me laugh a lot. I remember this one story. I wanted to reach out to him to make sure that I wasn't, stealing a story from him or anything. And I emailed him about the story, and he emailed me back and said that I had carte blanche to write about the story, but then put an asterisk next to it and said, "Void in New Jersey." And I still do not know what that means, but it made me laugh. Josh was just one of the good ones, and we're definitely going to miss him a lot.
I thought one day that I learned the secret of what gave Josh all of his boundless energy, because he always did seem to be working harder than anybody else in the newsroom, and with more focus and just endless energy. And so one day when we took a break to go upstairs to the cafeteria and talk a little bit about the union for a few minutes, which we had to do in person because he had serious trouble with personal email. He made an account and then forgot the name of the account and the password, and that was just lost to time. But when we went upstairs to talk one day, he bought chocolate milk and a really big green energy drink and opened them both and started just alternating sips as if it was not the strangest thing that anyone had ever done. And I thought maybe that is what fuels this unparalleled reporter. But it turns out that he had never done that before and wasn't really sure why I thought it was so delightful. So the mystery will live on for me.
Josh told many stories during his career as a journalist, but the ones he enjoyed telling the most were the ones about his family. He would smile and his eyes would light up when he would reminisce about his days when he met Sharon and their time at the New Haven Register. He'd always refer to her as his better half. Kelly, he loved to talk about her days as an athlete. I would get regular updates about what she did on the basketball court and on the softball field. He was so proud of how great she was in sports, and he was even prouder of the path she took in the medical field. He couldn't talk enough about that. And Danny, I would get daily updates about his baseball games. He was so proud of the way he played, and he also talked about a lot of the simple times that him and Danny had, the simple things that they would do together. It seemed to mean so much to him. And his music, I would receive audios of the music that Danny produced, and he was so proud of that. And his granddaughters, Josh loved seeing his granddaughters, and he loved talking about how they were growing up, and he really enjoyed his time with them. So I would say in Josh's long storied career, the stories that spoke the most to him and the stories he loved to tell the most were the ones about his family.
The Hartford Courant has always been greater than the sum of its parts. But the part that Josh contributed was one of the greatest of all.